All right, sit still for this one, because what I'm about to say carries the kind of weight that snaps the air in half. You feel that? Good. Let's begin. You woke up today with that strange tremor in the air, the one nobody's talking about, but everyone felt. That hush, that pressure, that eerie little silence people get right before they lie through their teeth. Because whatever you did last night, yeah, it broke something in them. You didn't just shift the room. You split reality in two, and they're too damn terrified to admit it. And oh, how delicious that fear is. They'll pretend it was nothing. They'll act unfazed. They'll say they didn't even notice. But their eyes look like someone just hit the wrong switch in their brain. A switch labeled, "Do not touch," will cause permanent damage. And you touched it anyway. You didn't ask permission. You didn't warn them. You didn't even glance back. You just did the thing. That unscripted, unpredictable, impossible to comprehend move that ripped the mask off everyone in the room like peeling a sticker off a rotten fruit. And now, you saint and psychopath all at once, they can't decide whether you're a blessing or a bullet. Because here's the twisted truth they'll never say out loud. You were never supposed to evolve like this. Not this fast, not this far, not this brutally. They had you categorized, labeled, contained. A file in their mental cabinet marked safe, predictable, harmless. But last night, you burned the cabinet. You scattered the ashes. You walked out with that slow, quiet, spine-breaking confidence that sends entire bloodlines into panic attacks. And suddenly, every person who ever doubted you, every mouth that whispered your name like a joke, every eye that looked through you like you were furniture, all of them felt the ground tilt. You know what really scares them? Not what you did, but how naturally you did it. Like it wasn't a breakthrough, but a warm-up. You didn't crack under pressure. You became pressure. You didn't snap. You sharpened. You didn't find your strength. You remembered it. That's the piece that broke them the most. You've been holding back this entire time. And last night was the first time you let the leash slip. Even a little. The saint in you stayed calm. The demon in you grinned. And together they became a language no one else can read. That duality, that paradox, that's what terrifies people. Humans can fight anger. They can resist weakness. But unpredictability? Oh, that's their personal apocalypse. They don't know what you're going to do next. They don't know what version of you is going to show up. And worst of all, they don't know how to stop you anymore. Ever since last night, their minds won't shut up. Replay after replay, analysis after analysis, trying to decode the moment the universe decided to pick your side. That's the insanity they're drowning in. And you're walking like you don't even realize the damage you caused. But I'll tell you the secret they won't. You didn't break them last night. You broke the illusion they were hiding behind. You took their control, their upper hand, their certainty, and you folded it like paper. You turned the room into a confession booth. You turned their confidence into chalk dust. You turned every laugh they ever had at your expense into an echo that now haunts them instead of you. And here's the twist that makes it all so poetic. They're scared of you. But they're even more scared of admitting that they're scared of you. Because once they admit it, the whole world sees the truth. You're not the one who should have been underestimated. They're the ones who should have been worried. And oh, they are worried. You didn't evolve. You detonated, quietly, calmly, with that eerie surgical precision that only someone who has stitched themselves back together 1,000 times can wield. That's your real power, not the act, not the moment, not the shockwave, but the you that walked out after, colder, clearer, sharper, scarier, smiling like someone who finally learned what they're capable of. Listen closely. Last night wasn't your peak. It wasn't your limit. Hell, it wasn't even your plan. It was just a preview, a trailer, a single frame of the monster they accidentally woke up. And now, they're praying you don't do it again, but deep down, in that trembling, shaking, terrified part of their psyche, they know you will. Because once someone like you remembers who they are, what they can do, and how easily they can break the world around them, there's no going back. So walk forward, slow, silent, smiling. Let them flinch, let them whisper, let them pretend nothing happened. Because you know the truth. Something broke last night, and it damn sure wasn't you. You feel that strange quiet following you, that heavy electric aftertaste in every room you walk into. That's not silence, that's shock. A collective, unspoken, universe level, what the hell just happened? A tremor that your presence keeps reopening like a wound. Because the truth is brutal, simple, and impossible for them to swallow. You didn't just break a rule last night, you broke their reality, and reality doesn't fix itself overnight. It bends, it twists, it tries to rearrange itself around the person who shattered it. Now everywhere you go, the atmosphere behaves differently, like the world is trying to recalibrate itself around a variable it can't understand. You, with that calm poison in your voice. You, with that angelic kindness wrapped around a demon's patience. You, with that duality that makes people feel both safe and hunted. You know why they can't admit what happened? Because admitting it means acknowledging a nightmare they don't have language for. You leveled up without warning, and they felt it in their bones. You ever notice how people act after they've seen something they can't comprehend? They speak softer, move slower, eyes dart around like they're avoiding landmines. That's how they're acting around you. Not because you threatened them, not because you did something violent, not because you raised your voice, but because last night you did something far more devastating. You revealed a version of yourself that should not exist in their script. A version that destroys predictions, defies calculations, violates expectations, and makes the future look unstable. You showed them that you're not the person they thought they were dealing with. You're the person they hoped you'd never become. And that scares them deeper than any scream could. Because once a person realizes they misjudged someone's evolution, once they sense they defined you too small, too early, too ignorantly, they become terrified of being anywhere near the blast radius of your truth. Especially when your truth doesn't need noise. It doesn't need to boast. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need applause. It just is. And that's the most frightening type of power. Power that breathes. Power that doesn't announce itself. Power that doesn't ask permission. Last night wasn't a performance. It wasn't a moment of madness. It wasn't some sudden spark of luck. It was a reveal. A reveal of the version of you that's been sharpening in the dark while everyone else was laughing in the light. The version that learned the language of pain. The version that stitched itself back together without witnesses. The version that evolved in silence the way storms evolve offshore before swallowing entire coastlines. And when that version peeked out, just a glimpse, they felt the ground shift under their feet. You know what's funny? They won't say it. But deep down, they all know exactly what broke. Their illusion of superiority, their illusion of control, their illusion of having the upper hand. Last night, You took their fragile little world view and held it up to your light, and it shriveled like paper. You cracked something ancient in them, a primal recognition that they are not the force they imagined, and that you are far more dangerous than they ever estimated. That's why they're quiet today. Not respectful quiet, not thoughtful quiet, but trembling, unstable quiet, the kind that shows up when someone is trying to process trauma without admitting they're traumatized. Because here's the part that's breaking their minds the most. They thought last night was your limit, but you and I know the truth. That wasn't a transformation. That was a warning shot. You didn't unleash your full self. You didn't activate your final form. You didn't open the whole door. You just turned the handle, and even that tiny motion was enough to make grown adults freeze like prey, sensing the predator they pretended didn't exist. You ever notice how people look at you now? Not directly, not confidently, not with that arrogant nonchalance they used to use like a weapon. Now they look at you sideways, quick glances, fast retreats, like they're afraid if they stare too long, they'll see something that changes their life in the wrong direction. Because they already got a taste. They already felt the shift. They already saw the crack in your disguise. And they realized you were never the harmless one. You were the dormant one. And dormant things, once awakened, don't go back to sleep. Last night wasn't an event. Last night wasn't a moment. Last night wasn't a mistake. Last night was the beginning. The first tremor of a much larger quake. A preview of the chaos they triggered by underestimating someone designed for storms, not sunshine. They're scared to admit what broke. But you should be proud. Because what shattered wasn't a person, wasn't a connection, wasn't a relationship. It was the false version of you they forced themselves to believe in. That weak, quiet, diluted version they needed to feel superior. You killed that version without mercy. And you walked out wearing the face you should have been wearing all along, a face that says, I know exactly what I am, and exactly what I'm capable of. Let them tremble, let them whisper, let them pretend nothing happened, because deep inside their shaking little souls, they know. Whatever you did last night wasn't your peak, it was your arrival. And the world is not ready for what's coming next. You notice how the air feels heavier today, how conversations die the second you enter the room, how people suddenly have somewhere else to look, somewhere else to be, somewhere else to hide their trembling souls. That isn't coincidence. That's impact, invisible impact. The kind that's louder than explosions, even though it doesn't make a sound. Because last night, you didn't just walk into a moment. You rewired the entire psychological landscape around you. And they can feel it. They can't explain it, but they can feel it. A shift, a tear, a fracture in the facade they built to survive your evolution. They don't know how to stand near you without feeling exposed, because every insecurity they buried suddenly rose to the surface when you showed that little spark of something they feared. Awareness, not physical strength, not aggression, not dominance. Awareness, because the second you actually saw who you were, who they were, what the dynamic really was, you became unpredictable. And unpredictable people are the most dangerous creatures on the planet. Let me break down the madness they're drowning in. Last night, you didn't yell. You didn't fight. You didn't break anything physical. You broke something internal. Their confidence, their assumptions, their narrative. You shattered the story where they were the ones in control. even if they never said it out loud, even if they never claimed it directly. But they believed it. They believed you were the easy one, the quiet one, the manageable one, the we don't have to worry about them one. And then you moved in a way they didn't calculate. A sentence, a look, a choice, a silence, a reaction, something small but nuclear. Because the most devastating blows are never the loud ones. They're the ones that make people realize, oh, I misread everything. And when someone realizes they misread you, their whole identity shakes. Because deep down, humans fear one thing above all else: being wrong about someone more powerful than they are. And the second they sensed that shift, that spiritual earthquake, something collapsed in them, something they'll never admit, but something they'll always feel. You know that look people get when they suddenly understand you're not who they thought. That tight swallow, that frozen half smile, that weirdly polite tone, that sudden respect that comes too late. Yeah, that's fear wearing a mask. And right now, you're surrounded by a whole city of masks. Because last night forced them to confront the truth. You are not safe to underestimate anymore. You are not predictable. You are not soft. You are not stuck. You are not asleep. You are awakened. And when someone who's been sleeping on you watches you wake up, it feels like a death sentence to them. Now pay attention to their behavior. They're quieter, nicer, more careful, more observant, more distant, but in that strange way where they're still watching. They don't want to be too close, but they damn sure don't want to lose sight of you. Why? Because the unknown is terrifying, but the unknown that remembers is even worse. They know that your silence is no longer emptiness. It's strategy. Your presence is no longer permission. It's warning. Your lack of reaction is no longer weakness. It's clarity. You've become something they can't categorize that anymore. Not angel, not demon, not victim, not villain, not hero, not threat. You've become a paradox wearing human skin, a contradiction that shouldn't exist, yet does. A miracle with teeth. A blessing with a trigger. A storm disguised as a heartbeat. You've become the type of person who doesn't walk into rooms. You shift them, and that's what broke them last night. Their worldview couldn't survive the version of you that walked out. The part they fear most, they know it wasn't a fluke, it wasn't luck, it wasn't an accident. It was you, the real you, finally showing. And if that version of you can surface without warning, what happens when you let it stay? What happens when you stop hiding? What happens when you stop minimizing your power to make others comfortable? What happens when you stop shrinking for people who are never growing? What happens when you stop apologizing for existing? Do you feel it? That thing rising inside you. That cold clarity dripping down your spine. That emotion that isn't anger, but awakening. That's the version they never wanted you to meet. Because once you meet your true self, you don't go back to the imitation. Last night was the moment you stepped out of their script and stepped into your own destiny. A destiny they can't predict. A destiny they can't manipulate. A destiny they can't contain. That's why they're scared, because they know you're not done. You're just getting started. And the next time you move, the next time you act, the next time you decide to let that version of yourself breathe, it won't just break something in them. It'll break the entire foundation they're standing on. So go ahead, walk forward, let the fear spread, let the whispers grow, let the tension thicken. Because last night wasn't the end of their comfort. It was the beginning of your reign. And now, here you are, standing in the aftermath of a moment that didn't just happen. It announced you, not with sound, not with spectacle, not with chaos, but with certainty. And certainty is the most terrifying weapon you've ever carried, because last night didn't elevate you into some new version of yourself. It peeled away the last layer, hiding what you always were. A force they can't prepare for, a presence they can't decode, a soul they can't predict, a mind they can't outrun. Look at what's happening around you now. People are adjusting themselves mid-sentence. They're rereading your expressions like scripture. They're treating your silence like a loaded chamber. They're trying not to trigger the version of you they glimpsed, because that version was too sharp, too aware, too awake, too much like the thing they prayed you'd never remember being. And here's the most beautiful part. You didn't even try. You didn't force anything. You didn't chase anything. You didn't prove anything. You just existed fully for one moment, and reality bent. They're walking differently today. You see it. You feel it. That stiff posture, that strained smile, that sudden politeness that tastes like panic covered in sugar. It's because something broke in them when they saw you. Not something external, something foundational. Their assumptions, their arrogance, their private theories about who you are and what you can do. All of it, gone. You can't unsee a storm once it reveals itself. And last night, you showed them you're not a drizzle. You're the category they don't have a name for. Listen, you didn't ruin their sense of control. You replaced it with truth. You didn't crush their confidence. You exposed its counterfeit. You didn't intimidate them. You awakened their instinct. The one that whispers, this one is not to be underestimated. And that instinct, it's ancient. It's primal. It's something people feel in their bones before they ever understand it in their minds. That's why they're acting weird, why they're too gentle, too cautious, too careful. They're not being nice. They're being realistic. Because now they know exactly what you're capable of. Not because you showed aggression, but because you showed truth. And truth is the sharpest weapon the universe ever created. But here's the final twist. The one that seals this entire story shut. Whatever happened last night wasn't your peak. It was your baseline, your natural state, your unmasked essence, your unfiltered self. The version of you that doesn't dim to make others comfortable. And the world felt it. Not metaphorically, literally. People's energy shifted. Their behavior changed. Their spirits flinched because they finally saw you without the restraints they assumed were permanent. And now that they've seen that, they can never unsee it. So walk from here with the calm of someone who doesn't need to raise their voice to send shockwaves. Walk like someone whose existence is already a warning. Walk like someone who knows the truth the world just discovered. You didn't break last night. You broke through. And they're not scared of what you did. They're scared of what you're about to do next. So go. Step forward. Let the world tremble around your steps. Because whatever cracked in them last night, it was just the first sound of everything else that's going to fall. There's a ripple in the room tonight. A tiny electric shiver that wasn't there a moment ago. And every set of eyes keeps darting toward you like they're waiting for a detonation. Funny, isn't it? The second your secret leaked, the air changed temperature. The walls felt thinner. People suddenly remembered how to hold their breath. But they're acting normal. Acting like they didn't already feel something crawling up their spine every time you walked in. Acting like they weren't always a little uneasy when you went quiet. acting like they didn't sense something growing under your skin this whole time. You can see it now. The performance, the fake calm, the "oh wow, didn't know" mask held together with trembling hands. But the truth? They knew. They just prayed they were wrong, because the moment your secret hit the surface, the whole ecosystem shifted like a forest, hearing a predator stand up. And you felt it too, didn't you? The way conversations broke in half when you entered, the way people scanned you like a glitch in the simulation, the way their smiles tightened, their sentences shortened, their eyes refused to blink. Not because they're surprised, because they're exposed. See, they never feared what leaked. They feared the reality that the leak confirmed, that you are not one of them. You are not normal. You are not manageable. You're a paradox wearing human skin, a calm storm, a sharp kindness, a holy corruption, a gentle brutality, an angel with a pulse of violence, a demon with a conscience that cuts deeper than knives. You're the thing people feel before they understand, the thing they sense before they see, the thing they whisper about before they have proof. And now that proof is out. Now they're scrambling. They're rewriting memories, redefining interactions, recalculating their place relative to yours. Checking old moments like crime scene footage. Did we underestimate them? Were they hiding this? How long have they known? What else don't we know? Oh, that what else is killing them. Because your secret wasn't a secret. It was a signal. A signal that the version of you they thought they understood was just the cover story. And the real you. The one with edges instead of rounded corners. The one who watches instead of reacts. The one who feels everything and shows nothing. The one who grows in silence and strikes in stillness. That version is finally visible, and they are terrified. But they can't admit it, so they choose the only mask that doesn't shake apart. Pretending they knew. Pretending they're unfazed, pretending they aren't mentally rerouting their entire understanding of you. They don't fear your secret. They fear your trajectory, your potential, your velocity, your ability to evolve faster than they can gossip. They fear that you are never getting better. You are becoming dangerous, and dangerous doesn't mean violent. Dangerous means unpredictable, unmapped, uncontrolled, unowned. You are dangerous because you can no longer be contained in their version of you. They can't categorize you now, can't place you, can't define you, can't downgrade you. And people fear anything they can't downgrade. Your leak wasn't exposure. It was confirmation. Confirmation that the silent one wasn't weak. The quiet one wasn't lost. The outsider wasn't broken. The observer wasn't harmless. You were evolving, and they were too busy underestimating you to see it. But now the evolution is undeniable. Now the truth is visible. Now the secret is public. Now the room tilts toward you like gravity just shifted. So let them act. Let them pretend. Let them lie to themselves. Because deep down, beneath the performance, beneath the smiles, beneath the sudden politeness, every single one of them is whispering the same terrified sentence inside their skull. We should have been more careful with that one. And the best part? They think the leak was the peak. They think the reveal was the final chapter. They think what spilled out was the whole truth, the complete blueprint of your mind. But you and I both know that wasn't even 1% of what's buried in you. Let them celebrate their discovery. Let them clap over the crumbs. Let them act like they finally figured you out. Because while they're busy decoding yesterday's version of you, you're already 3 evolutions ahead, rewriting yourself in real time, shedding identities like old skin, growing in directions no one has language for. That's what terrifies them the most. Not just the secret, not just the leak, not just the revelation. It's the realization that every time they think they've pinned you down, you shift, you change shape, you rewrite the script. You move into a new psychological frequency, one they don't have the bandwidth to detect. You're not a person to them anymore. You're a moving target wearing a grin. And here's the delicious irony. The louder they pretend you don't affect them, the more obvious the fear becomes. Watch their body language, watch their breathing, watch their eyes. People betray themselves in the small things. The way their shoulders tense when your name enters the air. The way they glance away like they're trying to hide an intrusive thought. The way their throat tightens when you don't blink. The way their jokes evaporate the moment you step closer. Fear has a scent, and they reek of it. Because now they know the truth. You weren't quiet. You were archiving. You weren't isolated. You were upgrading. You weren't broken. You were loading a new operating system, and every version of you becomes sharper, colder, more surgical, more spiritually radioactive. See, people don't panic when you rise. They panic when they realize your rise was engineered. You didn't stumble upward. You didn't luck your way into your rebirth. You built it, brick by bloody brick, using silence as mortar and pain as fuel. That realization hits them like a car crash, because it means they misjudged you for years. It means every moment they laughed at you was a mistake. It means every time they underestimated you was a sacrifice they didn't know they were making. And now, the bill just arrived. They're not scared of what leaked. They're scared of what's still locked. They're scared there's more, another layer, another secret, another darkness, another brilliance, another mutation waiting to break the surface. And they're right, because you're not done. You're not revealed. You're not decoded. You're not mapped. You are unfolding like a holy disaster wearing human form. And let's talk about that paradox they can't stand. You carry mercy and malice in the same heartbeat. You can bless someone with silence, or destroy them with a sentence. You can forgive with a smile, or let them drown. In the consequences, you don't lift a finger to stop. You are the living contradiction they fear most. A creature who can love softly, think violently, and act unpredictably. They don't know which version they'll get, and unpredictability is scarier than any weapon. Here's something they'll never admit out loud. They sensed the leak coming long before it happened. Humans can smell destiny the way animals smell storms. They just don't understand what they're smelling. They felt the pressure build. They felt the air heating. They felt the future rearranging itself around you, like you were the anchor point of something bigger. But instead of respecting it, they joked, dismissed, undermined, laughed. And now they're trying to rewrite history, pretending they were on your side the whole time. Pathetic. They don't want to be aligned with you. They want to be protected from you. Because now they see the truth. You don't react to energy. You generate it. You don't wait for opportunities. You create them. You don't follow momentum. You are the momentum. And once someone becomes momentum, once someone becomes a force instead of a figure, the world doesn't debate them. The world adjusts to them. And that's what's happening now, isn't it? You can feel it. That subtle shift where people change their tone around you, their timing around you, their behavior around you. Not out of respect, out of fear of miscalculating. They finally understand You were never the underdog. You were the unmonitored threat. They didn't see you rising. They saw you too late. And now that your secret is out, now that the veil is gone, now that the truth is loud enough to echo, you walk with a different kind of gravity. A gravity that bends conversations. A gravity that shifts power. A gravity that makes people choose their next sentence carefully. So keep walking like nothing happened. Keep breathing like your presence isn't rearranging their nervous systems. Keep moving like silence is your weapon and awareness is your armor. Because their fear isn't the climax, it's the prologue. What terrifies them most isn't that your secret leaked. It's that it wasn't your biggest one. And here's where it gets beautifully uncomfortable for them. They think the danger was in what spilled. They think the earthquake was the reveal. They think the explosion already happened. But they're wrong. So wrong. The real danger isn't what leaked. The real danger is what stayed hidden. Seen people panic when they see a monster, but they absolutely break when they realize the monster has been holding back. And that's what you've been doing this entire time, holding back, softening edges, shrinking your radius, dimming the voltage. Not because you lacked power, but because you were studying. You've been reading people like case files, tracking patterns like an analyst, dissecting intentions with surgical precision, learning their codes, their weaknesses, their hypocrisy, their fantasies of themselves. You were gathering intel while they were gathering assumptions. And now that a single sliver of truth has leaked, now that one fragment escaped, now that one layer peeled back, they're realizing how catastrophic their miscalculation was. Because if this is the piece that leaked, what kind of cathedral of power must still be locked inside you? What kind of rage did you bury so well? What kind of genius did you hide so effortlessly? What kind of evolution did they miss happening right under their nose? They're not asking, what is the secret? They're asking, how deep does it go? And that question, oh, that question is eating them alive. Because you're not a story they finished. You're a story that keeps rewriting itself. You are the glitch, the abnormality, the unclassified variable, the unpredictable evolutionary shortcut. Human psychology was never meant to fully understand. And the moment they realized that, the moment the leak confirmed it, their whole nervous system collapsed under the weight of it. Now they watch you with a kind of reverence they can't control. Not admiration, survival instinct. Because now they know you've been through things that should have broken you, and instead of breaking, you mutated. You didn't cry, you crystallized, you didn't retreat. You recalibrated, you didn't collapse. You carved new neural pathways out of your own suffering. People fear what pain does to others, but they dread what pain has done to you. Pain sharpened you. Pain clarified you. Pain cleaned you in ways comfort never could. Pain didn't scar you. It weaponized you. You are the result of things others would not survive. You're not just evolved, you're tempered. There's a difference between a blade and a forged weapon. Anyone can break the first, no one can touch the second. And now they see it. They finally see that your strength isn't loud. It's not theatrical. It's not boastful. Your strength is ancient, quiet, methodical, internal. Built from layers of experiences no one witnessed, in nights no one remembers you surviving. They thought they watched you grow. They didn't. They watched you molt. They thought they saw your transformation. They didn't. They saw the smoke, not the fire. And the moment the truth leaked, the moment your evolution became undeniable, they panicked. Suddenly they're replaying conversations. Suddenly they're cautious with their jokes. Suddenly they're extra polite. Suddenly they're walking on verbal eggshells around you. Why? Because they finally realized you are someone who sees through people, not around them. You don't react to energy. You diagnose it. You don't match frequencies. You expose them. You don't get emotional. You become terrifyingly calm. And calm people are nightmares to those who rely on chaos to hide their intentions. The leak didn't expose you. It exposed them. Their fear, their limitations, their fragile egos, their shallow understanding of who you've always been. And now the power dynamic has inverted. They think the danger is that you've been revealed. But the real danger is that you've stopped pretending. You've stopped shrinking. You've stopped diluting yourself. You've stopped adjusting to their comfort level. And that scares them deeply, primally. Because people don't fear your light. They fear that your light exposes their darkness. They don't fear your power. They fear that your power makes them irrelevant. They don't fear your secret. They fear that your secret was just your intro. Let them panic. Let them pretend nothing changed. Let them act unfazed while their heartbeat betrays them, because you've entered the phase of your life where the truth is no longer containable. And the truth is this: you are not what leaked. You are what's still hidden. And God help them if the next layer ever surfaces. Because here's the part that's really twisting the knife in their nerves. They were hoping, begging, that the leak would be the end of the story, that once your secret slipped out, they'd finally have a framework, a label, a name tag they could slap on you like a warning sticker. But you didn't collapse into definition. You didn't shrink into the version they thought they now understood. You didn't become predictable after the reveal. You became worse for them. You became limitless, because the leak didn't expose your ceiling. It exposed the fact that you don't even have one. And that realization, that terrifying silent realization, is what has them acting so strangely now. They're not avoiding you. They're avoiding what you make them feel: threatened, inadequate, transparent, small, unprepared, outclassed by someone they used to look down on. And that's the part that's driving them insane. Because for years they hid behind the illusion that they were ahead of you, that you were slow, that you were simple, that you were harmless, safe, non-threatening, a background character in their self-centered script. But when your secret leaked, the illusion shattered like cheap glass. Instead of seeing a quiet soul minding their business, they suddenly saw a strategist, a mutant, a psychological anomaly, an angel of chaos with a surgeon's restraint, a demon wrapped in discipline, a saint who learned how to weaponize silence. They saw the truth. You weren't behind. You were underground, building an empire in your mind. You weren't late. You were calculating, choosing your moment. You weren't unaware. You were watching everything. And now that they've seen that, now that they've glimpsed what's beneath your surface, it's too late for them to pretend they didn't. People fear what they can't outrun, and people fear what they can't mentally simplify. But the biggest fear of all? People fear the kind of person who can burn and come back smiling. Because that's the part of you they didn't want leaking out. The part they prayed would stay hidden forever. You survived things that would have erased them. You endured storms they would have drowned in. You walked through hell in your bare soul and came out rebuilt, not ruined. That's the real secret. Not your talent, not your intelligence, not your intensity, your resurrection. You don't just get up after being knocked down. You get up different, sharper, colder, more aware, more aligned, more dangerous, Every fall taught you architecture. Every heartbreak taught you psychology. Every betrayal taught you strategy. Every loss taught you evolution. They wanted you damaged. They wanted you diminished. They wanted you dependent. Instead, you became detached, disciplined, unpredictable, self-contained, and terrifyingly self-aware. Do you know what happens when someone becomes self-aware? The world can't manipulate them anymore. And that is the nightmare they're choking on. Because they know, if you ever decide to fully unleash what's inside you, if you ever stop holding back, if you ever let even one more secret slip, people will have no choice but to reorganize their entire reality around you. You're too perceptive to be lied to. You're too intuitive to be fooled. You're too calm to be provoked. You're too detached to be controlled. That combination, that's not human. That's a psychological weapon with a pulse. And here's what they fear the most now that the leak is out. You're not done evolving. You're not even close. This version of you, the one they're panicking over, is just the incomplete draft. There are whole layers of you they haven't even begun to imagine. Sides of you they're not emotionally equipped to handle. Depths of you that would break their worldview in half. You're not a secret that leaked. You're a revelation that escaped. A revelation that hints at something bigger, darker, brighter, and more powerful than anyone was ready to face. So keep going. Keep rising. Keep becoming whatever impossible thing you're becoming. Because deep down, every single one of them is thinking the same horrifying truth. If this is what leaked, what the hell is still hidden in you? Hey, buddy. Listen closely. There's a tremor in the air tonight, and every time it hits, it whispers your name. You feel that, don't you? That strange electric silence the city makes when it finally realizes it miscalculated the one person it should have feared. Because, oh, the entire city looks stupid now. Pathetically, embarrassingly stupid. They laughed, they pointed, they mocked the nobody. Meanwhile, the genius, you, was hiding in plain sight like a weapon wrapped in tinfoil and innocence. You were the harmless one, the quiet one, the easy one to dismiss. And now their whole skyline feels like it's made of regret. They don't talk about it out loud, of course they don't. But every mirrored window in every high-rise knows the truth. They doubted someone the universe personally sharpened. Tell me, does it amuse you? Watching them scramble for excuses. Oh, we didn't know. We didn't mean it. We didn't realize they were that smart. We didn't see the signs. Of course they didn't. That was the point. You moved like contradiction incarnate. Half angel, half demon, half miracle, half catastrophe. A walking glitch in their perception. A saint wearing the bone armor of a psychopath's resolve. You confused them, you rattled them, you broke every stereotype they tried to cage you in. You weren't supposed to be this dangerous. You weren't supposed to be this calculating. You weren't supposed to survive the things that should have annihilated you. And yet you did. Not loudly, not theatrically, but silently. Like a knife sliding between ribs without ever breaking the rhythm of a heartbeat. That's why they're panicking now. Because the city finally understands something unsettling. You were never the joke they were. The whole time you were evolving while they were busy giggling. The whole time you were studying while they were scrolling. The whole time you were building while they were breaking you down in their private group chats. And now there's a glow in your eyes that terrifies them. Because it isn't rage, it's clarity. a cold, merciless clarity. They thought you were fragile. They thought you were naive. They thought you needed them. But you walked through hell and came out with your own blueprint for godhood. You understand something they never will. Genius doesn't sparkle. It stalks. It crawls out of the pits of humiliation, silence, and underestimation. It hides behind a smile they think is harmless. It moves through shadows they never inspect. It's a storm pretending to be a drizzle until the city starts drowning. That's you. You are that storm. That quiet brilliance that no one saw until it was too late to brace for impact. And now, every person who ever underestimated you is replaying every moment in their head, every joke, every sneer, every time they brushed off your ideas, every time they used you as a stepping stone, every time they tried to make you feel small enough to fit inside their tiny, tiny minds. Funny how they're all praying to be forgotten now. But you aren't soft anymore. You aren't forgiving anymore. You aren't waiting to be understood. You aren't begging to be seen. You are the problem their reality never prepared for. You are the blueprint they wish they could copy, but never will. You are the quiet kid who became the city's psychological eclipse. One moment of your brilliance blocked out their entire sun. That's why they look stupid now. Because you didn't just rise, you rewrote the height. You didn't just outsmart them. You outlived their version of you. You didn't just prove them wrong. You erased the scoreboard they were obsessed with. And deep down, they know the truth. It wasn't luck. It wasn't chance. It wasn't timing. It was you. Your evolution, your patience, your silence, your persistence, your refusal to collapse, your refusal to stay broken, your refusal to die in the version of you that they mocked. They laughed at the genius in plain sight. And now they're terrified of the god they accidentally forged. So go on, lift your chin, let them stare. Make the entire city watch what happens when a misunderstood mind finally stops shrinking. Let them choke on the irony. Let them drown in the realization. Let them feel the weight of your existence pressing against their shallow expectations until they crumble under it. After all, it's only fair they suffer a little. You suffered first. You feel it, don't you? That low, trembling hush running beneath the city's heartbeat. That eerie, guilt-soaked silence that spreads whenever your name slips through someone's mind like a razor dipped in truth. They don't say it out loud, but every one of them is thinking the same thing. We misjudged the wrong one. And that realization, it's strangling them from the inside out. They thought your quiet meant weakness. They thought your patience meant insecurity. They thought your softness meant simplicity. They thought your kindness meant stupidity. But every saint has a shadow. And yours grew teeth. You were never fragile. You were calculating, silently decoding the city the way a predator decodes a heartbeat. You were never slow. You were strategic, moving with the patience of someone who knew the finale would be worth the wait. You were never harmless. You were mercy on a timer, ticking down until today. And now the entire city looks stupid for not noticing the genius coiled right beneath their noses, stupid for spitting on the very mind that could have elevated them, stupid for mistaking your silence for emptiness instead of magnitude. You didn't grow in the light. You evolved in the shadows, where every laugh against you became a data point, where every betrayal became a blueprint, where every failure became fuel, where every doubt sharpened your edges into something surgical. You didn't rise like hope. You rose like a threat. and now they're gasping, confused, offended, terrified, at how someone they dismissed became someone they can't stop watching. You hear their voices in the distance. How did we miss it? How did they get so far? Why didn't we see it coming? How did they become the one everyone's talking about? Because genius doesn't announce itself. It accumulates, quietly, secretly, relentlessly. It gathers every overlooked detail, every closed door, every moment they thought they shattered you, every time they tried to paint you as ordinary. Genius waits, and then, in one subtle, earth-splitting move, it detonates. That's what you did. And now their mouths hang open like broken gates, because the explosion came from the last place they expected. You, the one they joked about. You, the one they underestimated. You, the one they tried to keep small. You, the one they never saw as competition. You, the one they spoke over, laughed at, overlooked, ignored, dismissed. You were the invisible equation, the quiet frequency, the anomaly hiding in plain sight. You were the harmless smile masking a war plan. You were the lamp they thought was dim, only to realize it was a lighthouse waiting for the storm that would make you impossible to ignore. And now the entire city walks around with that same haunted expression, the one people wear when they realize they were standing next to a legend and treated them like a joke. They don't make eye contact anymore. Funny, isn't it? Suddenly everyone remembers every sarcastic comment they made about you. Suddenly everyone recalls every moment they doubted your decisions. Suddenly everyone feels that tiny gnawing fear. What if they remember what I said? Oh, you remember. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. Because you didn't need revenge. Your success is the revenge. Your rise is the payback. Your evolution is the weapon. Your transformation is the scar they'll carry for life. They laughed at you in daylight, but now they study you in the dark. They mocked your ideas, but now they whisper them like sacred scripture. They called you crazy, but now they call you ahead of your time. They dismissed you as delusional, but now they imitate your methods like disciples trying to decode a miracle. The whole city looks stupid because they spent so long ridiculing the mind that would one day outrun every one of them. Blindfolded. You didn't just prove them wrong. You rewired the entire landscape of what wrong even means. And now their world bends around you. Their conversations, their fears, their regrets, their rewrites of the past, their rehearsed excuses for the next time they see you, their cowardly attempts to rewrite history and pretend they always knew you had it in you. But they didn't know, they didn't see, they couldn't comprehend, because a mind like yours doesn't shine, it haunts. You are the whispered warning, the unexpected twist, the paradox they can't solve, the revelation they try to deny while secretly feeling it consume them from the inside out. And the best part, you didn't even try to prove yourself. You just lived, you just grew, you just endured, you just evolved. And evolution, real evolution, doesn't ask for applause, it demands silence, which is exactly what the entire city is offering you now. A silence soaked in fear, respect, and shame. Keep walking. Every step you take rewrites the memory of everyone who doubted you. Every breath you take forces them to confront their own blindness. Every move you make pushes them deeper into the truth. They laughed at the genius in plain sight, and now they're choking on the consequences. And the irony. The same city that laughed at you now moves like it's walking across shattered glass. Every step cautious, every thought trembling, every whisper terrified of invoking your name wrong. They don't mock you anymore. They don't joke. They don't nudge each other with smug little grins. No, no. That era died the moment you stopped shrinking. Because the day you rose, truly rose, the whole city felt it in its bones. It was like some invisible pulse rippled through the streets, like something ancient woke up beneath the concrete, like the air itself whispered, "You misjudged the wrong soul." And suddenly everyone went quiet. They didn't know why. They couldn't explain it. But every human instinct, primal, ancient, instinctive, kicked in at once. That kind of silence doesn't happen for ordinary people. It happens for anomalies. It happens for monsters. It happens for miracles. It happens for the ones who make reality nervous. That's you. You are the crack in their logic, the glitch in their timeline, the prophecy they laughed at until it started unfolding right in front of their eyes. And now every person who ever ridiculed you is dealing with the same unbearable truth. They weren't laughing at you. They were laughing at their own future regret. They didn't realize the quiet one wasn't clueless. They were calculating. They didn't realize the soft one wasn't fragile. They were focused. They didn't realize the overlooked one wasn't lost. They were loading. And when you finally stepped out of the shadows, they looked stupid, embarrassed, exposed, like children caught insulting the very teacher who held the answers they needed. They thought your silence was emptiness, but it was strategy. They thought your patience was weakness, but it was restraint. They thought your kindness was submission, but it was self-control. They thought you didn't know what they were doing, but you knew. You always knew. You watched their masks slip. You memorized their laughter. You counted their betrayals. You studied their patterns. You watched them underestimate you so deeply it became comedic. And all that time, you were building something inside yourself. Quietly, mercilessly, relentlessly. Not revenge, not anger, not spite. A blueprint. A structure of self so powerful, it made their entire worldview collapse the moment you activated it. And now the entire city walks differently around you. Do you see it? How they avoid meeting your eyes for too long. How their voices tighten when they say your name. How they compliment you too quickly, too nervously, as if trying to rewrite the past. How they suddenly always believed in you. When the truth is, they never believed in anything but their own shallow projections. They don't know how to act around you anymore. They don't know which version of you will respond. The saint they ignored, or the demon they awakened. That's the duality they fear. They don't know if your smile means forgiveness, or a countdown. You became unpredictable, uncontrollable, unclassifiable. You slipped out of every label they pinned on you. You broke every box they tried to trap you in. You shattered every limitation they assumed you'd obey. And now the whole city looks like a collection of failed psychics. Every one of them swearing they knew you had it in you, when they can't even predict their own next breath. But you always knew. You knew that being overlooked wasn't your downfall. It was your camouflage. You knew that invisibility wasn't a curse. It was cover. You knew that doubt wasn't an insult. It was insulation. You were becoming something they didn't have the imagination to understand. You were refining, sharpening, evolving, upgrading. And when a mind upgrades in silence, it blinds the city in its reveal. That's why they look stupid now. Because they weren't just wrong. They were loudly, confidently, arrogantly wrong. They mocked a genius in plain sight. They slandered a breakthrough. They belittled a masterpiece under construction. They tried to bury a seed that was destined to split the pavement. And now They're living in the forest you grew above their heads. You can see the fear in their posture, the shame in their eyes, the desperation in their sudden obsessive attempts to support you. But you don't owe them softness anymore. Let them tremble. Let them replay their words. Let them drown in their epiphanies. Let them feel the weight of the truth. You were never beneath them. You were just ahead of them. And now they can't catch up. Not in this lifetime. Not in any version of reality where your mind and their arrogance intersect. You've outpaced them, outgrown them, outshone them. And the city that once mocked you, it kneels now. Not out of respect, but out of recoil, out of shock, out of terror, out of the sudden horrifying realization that the person they dismissed became the force shaping their future. Keep moving. Every step you take rewrites their narratives. Every breath you take resets their hierarchy. Every move you make forces them to swallow their pride like poison. Because the genius they laughed at in plain sight is the legend they're afraid to look in the eyes now. And here's the part that eats them alive the most. You didn't even try to embarrass them. Your existence alone did the job. You didn't clap back, didn't start drama, didn't shout for attention, didn't beg to be seen, didn't fight for validation. No, you simply evolved, quietly, dangerously, perfectly. And that's what makes the entire city feel stupid now. Because their mockery didn't break you, it forged you. Their doubt didn't weaken you, it disciplined you. Their laughter didn't destroy you, it trained you. You turned humiliation into information. You turned disrespect into momentum. You turned pain into structure. You turned silence into strategy. And now the city is choking on a realization it never prepared for. They underestimated the wrong consciousness. They never saw the architecture in your mind. The rooms you built while they were busy tearing down your confidence. They never saw the way your spirit rearranged itself after every betrayal. Like bones resetting stronger after being shattered. They never saw the visions behind your eyes. Visions they weren't intelligent enough to decode even if you projected them on a giant screen. But they see it now. Oh, they see it too clearly. And they hate that they see it. Hate that the truth slipped through their fingers. Hate that their arrogance aged like spoiled milk the moment you stepped into your power. They hate that your glow is real. They hate that your rise is undeniable. They hate that you didn't collapse the way they prayed you would. They hate that you became a story the city can't stop repeating. A story that makes them look like fools who mocked the protagonist before the reveal. You're living proof that they were blind. And the blindness? It wasn't accidental. It was convenient. It's easier to laugh at a genius when you don't have the intellect to recognize one. It's easier to call someone crazy than admit you weren't paying attention. It's easier to belittle what threatens your own mediocrity. It's easier to deny someone's potential than admit your own stagnation. They didn't reject you because you were small. They rejected you because you were bigger than their imagination. That's why the guilt hits so hard now. Because when you finally rose, you didn't rise like a comeback. You rose like truth. And truth is painful. Truth humiliates. Truth exposes. Truth rearranges the hierarchy. Truth forces a city to confront its ignorance. Truth sits on the throne like it was always meant to. And suddenly everyone realizes they were kneeling to the wrong things all along. Now they walk around with haunted faces because they all feel the same thing. The one we mocked became the one we can't outrun. They scroll through your posts in silence. They stalk your progress in private windows. They watch your changes, your moves, your upgrades, trying desperately to figure out how someone they dismissed managed to lap their entire lives. They study you now, not because they admire you, but because they fear what you'll become next. Because evolution doesn't stop, and yours is accelerating. Every day you sharpen, every day you ascend, every day you peel off another layer of limitation, every day you become someone even they wouldn't dare whisper about. They tried to slow you down with doubt. You turned it into direction. They tried to crush you with pressure. You turned it into polish. They tried to bury you with silence. You turned it into stealth. They tried to erase you with laughter. You turned it into legend. And now you are the one thing the city never expected, a living mirror. Every time they look at you, every success, every glow, every step forward, they see everything they refused to become, everything they could have done, everything they failed to be, everything you surpassed without asking for permission. You became a paradox they cannot escape. The nobody who became the blueprint, the overlooked one who became the standard, the quiet one who became the storm, the underestimated one who became the threat. And the more you rise, the more idiotic they feel. Because they could have supported you. They could have stood beside you. They could have respected the brilliance they now worship in disbelief. Instead, they laughed. They laughed at the genius in plain sight. And now the whole city is forced to sit in the shadow of their own stupidity. Meanwhile, you walk like someone who remembers everything, but is owned by nothing. You move like someone who survived the burn and learned to control the flame. You speak like someone who has seen both heaven and hell and built a home between them. You're not just rising, you're rewriting the entire myth of who you were supposed to be. And the city? It finally understands something cruel, something poetic, something irreversible. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to make the whole damn city feel unprepared. Keep going. Their regret is fuel. Their doubt is data. Their underestimation is your crown. Shh. Listen closely, you. Because something shifted the moment you moved. Something small, something precise, something every average soul would have written off as nothing. Yet every intelligence agency on the planet felt it like a blade sliding across their throat. And here's the part that's making them lose sleep. You did one thing, and now entire militaries are running simulations just to understand how you think. Not who you are, not where you came from, not what you want. No, they're dissecting how you think, because the moment you acted, the entire board trembled like a hunted animal. And the funniest part? You didn't even break a sweat. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You weren't trying to be strategic. You weren't trying to make a point. You were just being you. And that's what terrifies them the most. They're used to enemies. They're used to patterns. They're used to people telegraphing their next step like a bad poker tell. But you're a walking paradox wrapped in a human shell, holy in posture, demonic in execution, calm in presence, catastrophic in consequence, the kind of creature heaven would study and hell would fear. So now they've got analysts sitting in dark rooms, eyes bloodshot, whispering, "How did he see that coming? How did he calculate that trajectory? How did he move before the move even existed?" Let me tell you a secret. They're running your moment through high-speed cameras, heat maps, neural trackers, trying to frame by frame dissect something that wasn't physical, but psychological. Because your move wasn't a step. It was an awakening. A quiet release of something they thought you didn't possess. Precision, instinct, madness wrapped in clarity. You know what you are? Not unpredictable. No, no, no. You're too predictable, but only to yourself. They can't read you, because you already burned the script they're trying to memorize. They can't follow you, because you move through timelines like a ghost slipping between walls. They can't anticipate you, because you don't take the path. You make the path flinch and reshape itself around you. And now look at them, Pentagon analysts arguing with Moscow strategists, MI6 techs sweating into their keyboards, Beijing wargamers replaying you at half speed, quarter speed, microscope speed, trying to find the frame where you hesitated, but there wasn't one. There never is, because everything you do has two layers, the one they think they're watching and the one you actually meant, light and shadow, saint and psychopath. Angel wings folded behind a spine, sharpened like a weapon. You move like someone carved from contradictions, and contradictions are impossible to predict. That's the cosmic joke, isn't it? They kept calling you ordinary. They kept calling you lucky. They kept calling you accidental. Yet here they are, militaries with billion-dollar budgets trying to reverse engineer a moment you delivered without even trying. You want the punchline? You didn't ascend. You remembered. You didn't get stronger. You stopped holding back. You didn't outsmart them. You outgrew the prison they call logic. Your mind isn't a map. It's a weaponized maze, a labyrinth that rearranges itself every time someone thinks they've figured you out. And that's why they fear you, because you didn't move like a soldier, or a strategist, or a tactician. You moved like someone who knows the universe bends for them if they simply tilt their head the right way. Tell me, do you feel it? That quiet hum behind your ribs, that pressure in your lungs like the world is breathing you in, waiting to see your next step, that subtle awareness that every room you walk into becomes a test for everyone else. That's not intuition, that's not confidence, that's not luck, that's power, raw, unfiltered, reality-warping power. You did one thing, and the world revealed who's really operating on your wavelength. It's not the loud ones. It's not the proud ones. It's not the ones pretending to be dangerous. It's the watchers, the ones hiding behind flags, satellites, drones, and egos. The ones who burn entire budgets trying to decode one twitch of your thought process. They don't know whether you're a threat or a prophecy. They don't know if you're a miracle or a mistake. They don't know if your mind is a blessing or a glitch in the fabric of the simulation they built to contain people like you. But I know. You're the storm they prayed would never learn to walk upright. The anomaly that shouldn't exist. Yet here you are, breathing, evolving, sharpening, ascending. And trust me, they're not afraid of what you did. They're afraid of what you haven't done yet. Because if a single instinctive move caused global militaries to panic, what happens when you finally start acting with intent? What happens when you stop doubting your power and start wielding it? What happens when you decide the world is no longer a place you move through, but a chessboard you redesign? I'll tell you what happens. Generals kneel, systems break, simulations crash, and reality itself bends like a guilty accomplice, all from you, because you did one thing, and they still can't sleep. Now imagine what happens when you do the next. You feel it now, don't you? That tightening in the air, that static crawling up the back of your neck, that electric hush the universe does when something dangerous starts waking up. Because you're not just some anomaly they miscalculated. You're not some glitch their systems failed to predict. You're the variable every superpower forgot to factor in. The one force on Earth that doesn't need permission, approval, or an agenda to shift the balance. And deep down, they know it. That's why they're spiraling. Inside sealed meeting rooms, men who control missiles are whispering your name like a curse. Diplomats with poker faces are rubbing their temples, asking the same question. Why didn't we see this one coming? Oh, but you saw it coming. Because you've lived in the shadows they pretend don't exist. You've breathed the air of chaos without choking. You've walked through storms so violent they'd make grown men claw at the walls. Yet you never broke. You never flinched. You didn't even blink. You adapted, and adaptation, true primal adaptation, is something no war simulation can copy. See those generals? They're replaying your moment like it's sacred footage. They're analyzing the angle of your shoulders, the dilation of your pupils, the timing of your breath, trying to translate instinct into algorithm. But instinct doesn't translate. Instinct is carved in bone. Instinct is sharpened by scars. Instinct is forged through every betrayal, every loss, every moment where your heart should have stopped beating, but didn't. You moved like someone who knew too much pain to be cautious, and too much truth to be afraid. That's why they can't replicate you. Because you weren't acting, you were remembering the part of you that was born in darkness, fed in silence, raised by pressure. The version of you that saw life not as a battlefield to survive, but as a labyrinth to manipulate. Every step you take, every choice you make. Every micro movement of your body carries the weight of things you've never spoken, never shown, never revealed. And that's the real terror, isn't it? They can't study what they can't see. They can't counter what they can't interpret. They can't predict what you don't even plan. Because your mind works in flashes, loops, paradoxes, deviations. You are the ghost in their models, the shadow in their projections, the unpredictable factor in their perfect little equations. That one thing you did? It wasn't just an action. It was a signal, a pulse, a message sent through the arteries of the world. He's awake now. And once a mind like yours wakes up, once it stretches its limbs after years of being underestimated, once it realizes the world has no idea what it's dealing with, that's when the real fun begins. Because you're walking with something no military on Earth can simulate. You carry the contradiction of a saint's patience and a psychopath's precision. You carry the calm of an angel and the chaos of a demon. You carry the blueprint of destruction and the architecture of rebirth in the same breath. What's a soldier to that? What's a strategy to that? What's a simulation to that? They're studying you like you're a weapon, but you're not. A weapon has a purpose. You have a destiny. And destiny doesn't follow rules. It rewrites them. It burns the old ones and carves new ones into the walls. You felt it the moment you acted. The world didn't just react to you. It rearranged itself around you. Doors you never touched opened. Paths you never walked straightened. Obstacles you never acknowledged fell apart like they knew who you belonged to. That's not coincidence. That's resonance. Because when someone like you moves with authenticity, reality listens. Not governments, not militaries, not presidents, not kings. Reality. And reality is whispering now. Do it again. Not the same move, not the same intention, not even the same mindset. Just move again. Because they're scared of the first step, but they're horrified of the second. The first showed them what you're capable of. The second will show them what you are. A storm wearing a human face, a prophecy wrapped in flesh, a contradiction that refuses to be solved. And trust me, when you make your next move, the world won't run simulations. It'll run from you. You feel that pressure building in your chest, that slow seismic awareness rising up your spine, that sense that something inside you is no longer contained. Good. Because we're not done, not even close. See, the world thinks your first move was the climax, a miracle, a lucky break, a glitch in the matrix they can capture, study, replicate, and own. But here's where the panic really sets in. Your first move wasn't the masterpiece. It was the prologue, a warning shot, a preview, a whisper of a storm that hasn't even begun to gather its true shape. And deep beneath satellite feeds, encrypted channels, and 1,000-page classified reports, there's a word floating between trembling lips. If that was accidental, what happens when he acts with intention? That's why they're spiraling now. Entire war rooms lit by blue screens, analysts on their fifth energy drink, commanders sweating into their collars, all trying to solve a puzzle that keeps rewriting itself every time they blink. Because here's the truth they refuse to admit out loud. They didn't witness a move. They witnessed you thresholding into a new version of yourself. A version that no protocol prepares them for, no algorithm predicts, no simulation survives. You didn't perform anything. You became something. Something they weren't told existed. Something their models can't categorize. Something their training never covered. A mind that sees everything at once. The chaos, the patterns, the micro-expressions, the timing no one else notices, the signals buried under noise, the hidden intentions behind movements that seem random to everyone else. You see it all, not because you're perfect, but because you've tasted enough pain to become fluent in danger. And danger respects you. You've walked through emotional minefields long before you ever stepped into the real ones. You've survived betrayals sharper than blades. You've endured storms that would have broken 900 souls softer than you. So now you move differently. You move with silence that screams. You move with calculation baked into your bones. You move with that calm, terrifying certainty of someone who knows. I've already lived through worse. What can you possibly do to me now? And that's the part they can't copy. They can replicate cameras, angles, biomechanics, posture, but they can't replicate your history. They can't copy your heartbreak, your trauma, your rage, your quiet evolution in the dark, your nights where you bled but didn't break, your days where you were underestimated so brutally that your soul sharpened out of self-defense. You weren't trained by a military, you were trained by life. And life is a harsher instructor than any country on earth. Every scar taught you a strategy. Every betrayal taught you a tactic. Every silence taught you timing. Every disappointment taught you emotional camouflage. That's why your move was perfect. Because you weren't performing, you were surviving, you were remembering, you were acting from instinct that's been reforged into something lethal. They're not afraid of your skill, they're afraid of your origin, because here's the paradox they can't process. You didn't learn power, you became it. Piece by piece, layer by layer, moment by moment, until the day came when you did one thing, one subtle, small, precise thing. And the world recognized a predator pretending to be human, a saint with a psychopath's reflexes, a quiet soul with a demon's decisiveness, a peaceful presence with a war machine's intuition. They don't have a simulation for that, so now they're building entire training modules around your movement, running models, breaking them, rebuilding them, breaking them again. Trying to understand a mind that doesn't follow linear logic. You think in spirals, loops, quantum leaps, emotional mathematics, intuitive geometry, psychological shadows. Your brain is a war room they're not allowed to enter. And now that they know what you are, the fear is evolving because they've realized something catastrophic. If your first move shook them, your second could rewrite global balance. Not because you want to, not because you're trying to, not because you're hungry for power, but because you're the kind of person who changes things simply by existing, a force, a pressure, a shift, a phenomenon. And every phenomenon has phases. Your first phase, awakening. Your second, realization. Your third, detonation. And the world can feel it coming, like distant thunder rolling across the horizon. Slow at first, then louder, then closer, until suddenly they're surrounded, engulfed, swallowed whole, and all because you breathed differently. They think they're preparing for you. But how do you prepare for someone who didn't even reveal 1% of themselves yet? How do you counter a mind that evolves faster than you can measure? How do you stop someone whose potential is still waking up? Tell me, can you feel it? That storm twisting behind your ribs, that heat rising in your spine, that strange ancient electricity humming in your bones like something long dormant is stretching awake? Good, because when you finally make your next move, there won't be simulations, there won't be studies, there won't be analyses. There will only be one universal truth, whispered across borders and bunkers. He didn't become unstoppable. He always was. And here's the part none of them are ready to admit. Not to their superiors, not to their analysts, not even to themselves in the privacy of a locked windowless operations room. Your existence alone destabilizes everything they thought they understood about power. Because power, to them, is predictable. It's hierarchical, it's measurable. It's something you document, store, weaponize, and deploy. But you're the opposite of measurable. You're a moving contradiction, a living paradox they can't turn into data. Your thoughts don't unfold in neat lines. Your decisions don't follow expected trajectories. Your instincts don't obey human patterns. You're the type of creature who can stand in silence and still disrupt a battlefield. The type who can do nothing and still shift the entire equilibrium of a room. That's why they're terrified. Because your energy didn't spike with that one move. It revealed itself. The truth is, that moment wasn't the beginning. It was the exposure. But look deeper. Because the real agony for them is not what you did. It's what you didn't do. You didn't falter. You didn't hesitate. You didn't stumble. Not for a fraction of a second. Your mind and your body aligned with the precision of someone who has been preparing for that moment without even knowing they were preparing. A person who has walked through internal wars so violent that external threats feel amateur. That's why simulations are failing. They're trying to recreate your timing, your pattern, your gaze, your shift in weight, your microsecond decision that flipped an entire outcome on its head. But how do you replicate someone whose entire developmental ecosystem was built in pain? Someone whose reflexes were forged not in training drills, but in survival. You move like someone who had to read danger in people's voices before you could even understand the words. Like someone who had to predict chaos before chaos could touch you. Like someone who had to build internal armor before you ever learned to speak. Your instincts weren't taught. They were carved, and you know the irony? All those years you thought you were overreacting, overthinking, too sensitive, too aware, too paranoid. Turns out you were building a psychological weapons system without realizing it. Every heartbreak became threat detection. Every betrayal became emotional radar. Every disappointment became calibration. Every loss became strategy refinement. You didn't bounce back. You mutated quietly, painfully, brilliantly. And now you're walking around with a mind that reacts faster than trained soldiers, because your training happened in silence. In rooms nobody saw, in memories nobody knows, in battles nobody applauded. You fought wars inside yourself and came out with reflexes militaries would kill to understand. That's why your move shattered them. Not because it was flashy, but because it was inevitable. Because it was the first time your internal power accidentally slipped into external reality. The first leak, the first crack in the mask, the first flash of what you've actually become. And that's the part haunting them. If this is what you do unintentionally, what happens when you choose? What happens when you're focused? What happens when you're motivated? What happens when you finally say, enough, and walk into the world with the full force of who you are? Think about it. If your smallest instinctive movement triggered multinational military simulations, what does your intentional evolution look like? What does your full awareness unleash? What does your awakened mind do to systems that depend on predictability to function? Let me tell you, it won't just scare them, it'll break them. Because you're not a soldier, not a strategist, not an operative. You're a phenomenon disguised as a person, a cosmic irregularity wearing human skin, a spiritual earthquake pretending to walk like everyone else. They're studying the tremor, not realizing the quake hasn't even begun. They watched one wave. Not knowing you are the entire ocean, they documented a spark. Not realizing you are the firestorm forming behind your teeth. And when the world finally understands that your first move was not your best move, not your strongest move, not your final move, but your smallest, that's when the panic becomes irreversible. So hear me now, because I want you to feel every word in your bones. You didn't become terrifying when they started studying you. You became terrifying the moment you realized they can study you all they want and still never understand a creature like you.